Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Before Midnight, starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, as well as a few others, which I'll bring up, and directed by Richard Linklater. Now, this is my second viewing and third, I'll say, for the show because, and I've seen it once. I remember being, well, this is what this show is for, so let's just get straight into this. We open with Jesse, returned by Ethan Hawke, dropping his son Hank at the gate in the airport, while the actor playing Hank, Seamus Davy Fitzpatrick, I know him primarily from that god awful 2006 remake of The Omen, where he played Damien in that movie, as Jesse gets Hank some food as he wants to play soccer, versus Hank preferring Jesse not to come to his recital because his ex wife hates him because he married Celine, returned by Julie Delpy, amongst other things. And having kids of their own named Ella and Nina as Hank goes on the flight, and Jesse returns in the car to the car with Celine as well as their two daughters, and they go on the way home as the girls are asleep, and Celine takes a photograph of the girls, and Jesse steals an apple from Ella and Celine, while Ella, I should say, while Celine brings up a story of how she had to kill a couple of cats when she was just a little girl. And the girls wanted to go to the ruins, but Jesse passes it. And they talk about how much they're shitty parents. And don't get me wrong, I do like these characters as I like hanging out with them. But the writing in this is good, but at the same time sad. Because they live a married life, and at the end, they're going through things that reminded me of a life event that happened to me at the teenage years. I won't say what it is yet, but I'll get there when I get there. And their kids are adorable as their drive home is written well, and Celine assumes Jesse asked her to move to Chicago with him as he worries about his son. As I enjoy my time with them, at the least in this film. And don't get me wrong, I really like this movie, but I prefer Before Sunrise and Before Sunset to this movie. And after the girls wake up, the scene proves to me how shitty they are as parents. They stop by to get some groceries and go back to a house, and they hang out with family that I'm led to believe is Celine's. I'm not sure. As they hang out for the day and have some nice chats. For example, Jesse can't pronounce deja vu. And how the fuck can you not to pronounce it as an adult? I mean, come on. It's easy as it's a book written by Jesse himself, and the cinematography is pretty good, as the Greece is beautiful. As the location, Greece, is beautiful, and maybe one day I'll visit there. And what great that's what's great about some movies, and they shot at locations that are places that I want to visit at this point. The family talk about how a couple met from a Shakespeare play from the last summer, and one of them brings up sexual intercourse while they're eating, which is an inappropriate conversation at the table full of food. And director Richard Linklater does a fantastic job with not just conversation but the filming in Greece, in my opinion. The actress from Shakespeare asks Jesse and Celine how they met, and Celine plays a game of how they first met while the family members say read Jesse's book, and Celine brings up how Jesse wants her to move to Chicago, despite he never said that to begin with, which is another inappropriate topic of conversation. And the scene ends with the actress saying eventually people are going to break up. Oh, and I should rephrase that. When I said that they were married, they're not. They're just boyfriend and girlfriend, but they have kids of their own. And that maybe might happen to Jesse and Celine based on the ending, but I'll get there when I get there. This movie is making me jump to the end, which is not so smart of a choice in my opinion. The family gives a gift to Jesse and Celine to stay at a hotel to get away from the girls as they try to get out of it because Celine is stressed out about bringing them to this trip to Greece to begin with, as they say they want to watch the girls, which is nice of them. And that's how family can be sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. And the dinner scene is a nice scene, as it was great to watch. Jesse and Celine take a walk around Greece and have a talk about life until Celine is weirded out because they're doing what they did twice in this series, which is walking and talking, and that's what was missing in the early scenes until she brought up if he were to find her attractive, and to this day, when Before Sunrise happened in this movie in at the early 40s, and she set him up for him to fail the test as she gave him, which was the question I just brought up a second ago. And he brings up his grandmother just passed away and gets the text before they started eating, which is depressing, but he takes it kind of awkwardly well. Can I say, while he told his father he's now an orphan as a joke, which is not funny by the way, that would depress the shit out of me. And their conversation is nice, but at the same time, it's a little depressing. They go in a mini church and look around in it, and they go outside and ask each other what could they change about each other and talk about what they experience in, what they read versus what they went through, and have a nice quiet time and watch the sunset going down until it's gone. And they arrive at the hotel, and one of the clerks named Sophia asks Jesse and Celine to sign for her books for her and her husband, and they get to the hotel room and they get booked a massage and a bottle of wine, and they start smooching up the storm, and he takes briefly her top off. And this felt weird, to be fair, because remember, these are R-rated movies, sure, but they're married. No, they're just a couple until her phone rings as it's Hank calling her to telling her he left his science project and says good luck with her mother. And he brought up to never ever say that to him again, as they start having an argument about how his mother is a drunk bringing up Medea in the Bible, not that Tyler Perry shit. And she brings up the move to Chicago, and Celine feels miserable. And at one point, Celine pours some tea, excuse me. While Jesse is taking a leak, they have a rough conversation that reminded me of why people get divorced in the first place, like my parents did, which was tragic to me in my teenage years. But they have their reasons, which I won't talk about in the show, because that's not what this is. That's not what the show is for at all, as it was depressing me to fucking death. After the argument, Celine gets out of the room and sits all by herself because she wants to be alone for a little while. Jesse comes to the table and chats with Celine about all the romantic things in their relationship and smile about it as the movie ends, and I can't tell whether they're going to break up or not. And if there's a fourth part, I hope they don't break up, but at the end of the day, the climax depressed the fuck out of me, and I felt sad for them, but I'll still explain. But I still think this is a pretty good movie, and I'll explain why in the rating. I'll give this movie a 8.1 out of 10. I like Before Sunrise and Before Sunset more than this, but the dialogue is written pretty well, as it made me believe by the end of the movie they might break up, as it was never said for sure by then. And I do like and enjoyed my time with the characters, and the Before series more than anything is about life in general, and it reminded me of what I went through in my teenage years for reasons that depressed me. The cinematography is good, and where it's located is beautiful, and director Richard Linklater does a fantastic job at filming in Greece, as one day I'll visit there. And the acting is good in this movie, as good, but and this movie is good, but not as good as Before Sunrise and Before Sunset. I really enjoyed myself, despite there was times the circumstances was sad for sure. And hopefully, if they make a fourth part, they won't break up, but I can't say for sure. And I really did like the movie, and this is a solid recommendation, but at the same time, at the end of the day, I felt sad for them for their argument. But it's a pretty good movie in my opinion. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and I will be coming back in a couple of weeks since I've seen Boyhood before and reviewed it for the show. So I'm going to take a break from Linklater, and I will be back in 2 weeks, and everybody wants some. And until then, mwah, mwah, mwah.